Hey, what's going on, everybody? Jonathan Baylor back again with another episode of the SANE Show, and delighted to have a longtime friend of the show. It's been years. I don't even know how many years, 5, 6 years. Shawn Stevenson is back. This man is putting out new amazing work at a rate that I can't even wrap my head around. And he is here to tell us about his newest epicness, Eat Smarter, coming out December 29th. Welcome back to the show, Shawn.
Always a pleasure, man. Jonathan, you're one of my favorite people. This is going to be great.
Well, Shawn, I was so excited when you told me about your new book coming out because we were just going back and forth over text. We chatted briefly over the phone, and you were talking about how, with all the craziness that's going on in the world right now, this is a book ostensibly about food, but you show, I mean, you get into so many things that so many of us don't necessarily think relate to food. And this is something I've tried to talk about, but I think you handle it much better. Can you tell me a little bit about what's going on in our head and what's going on in our heart scientifically? Like, we're not talking woo woo stuff here. What's going on in our head and what's going on in our heart is affecting our metabolism.
Absolutely. And this is one of the fastest growing fields of psychoneuroendocrinology, for example. And I think it's really important for everybody to first understand that we have the most magnificent, complex organ in the known universe inside of our skulls. And the good news is we each have one. The not so good or maybe complex news is that we don't know how to use it very well. And one of the biggest tenets when it comes to understanding how our thought process, our feelings, our emotion affects our biochemistry is that your brain is the most powerful pharmacy in the known universe as well. Every single thought that you think has correlating chemistry that's produced, every single thought. So we can literally change what's happening in our bodies. I can get riled up and think about something that stresses me out, maybe something that makes me upset or angry, and just start to produce more stress-related catecholamines and adrenaline and cortisol. And those inherently start to shift and change what's happening with my metabolism inherently. That's how it works. And on the other side of the equation, if I think about things that are relaxing, things that make me happy, things that bring me joy, that make me feel a sense of gratitude when so much is going on in the world, those things shift my biochemistry as well. So the number one tenet is your brain is the most powerful pharmacy in the universe. And it's making hormones and neurotransmitters specifically, we talk about bioidentical, like these are specifically for you. And number two, we have power in this. We have the power to consciously choose the way that we want to feel. Now, not to negate, of course, we want to be clear about not to negate any emotions or feelings that come up, because it's great how we can respond to the environment and give us environmental stimuli. But when those what we call quote negative emotions come up, they're giving us valuable feedback, And one of my dear friends, Dr. Susan David, she's the author of Emotional Agility. She shared with me a long time ago, and she uses this term signposting, right? These emotions are signposting different ways of thinking for us. And so for myself personally, when we were having this conversation, I shared with her that when these negative emotions come up, I see them as an opportunity to ask a question, right? Because they're providing this feedback, but a lot of times we'll stuff it down, try to ignore it, or we'll get trapped in it. We can also get trapped in it. And so for me, and a closing point for this is when the negative emotion comes up, maybe it's fear, maybe it's, a sense of anger that things are not moving at the pace that we want. When we feel those feelings, get a good glimpse at it. Take a moment and just think about that feeling and ask, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What is it signaling for me? What is it offering me right now as an opportunity for me to learn? Maybe it's a new character trait. Maybe I need to start practicing more compassion and understanding. Maybe I need to cultivate more patience. Like there's some kind of value even in our negative emotion. So just to start with that as an overarching theme is that, our minds are largely controlling right off the bat, regardless of the food that we eat, which we'll talk about. Our minds will determine what our body does with the calories that we consume. It's far beyond the realm of calories. And if anybody knows that, it's definitely Jonathan Baylor.
Shawn, so we've got potentially virtuous or vicious cycle here, it sounds like, because we could potentially have these, and I like how you said negative thoughts kind of in quotations, and that's a whole nother show, because what is a negative thought is an interesting topic in and of itself. We have a what people refer to as a negative thought, and sometimes we would medicate that or treat that with certain food choices. And certainly the food choices we make on the other end may increase our ability to react healthfully to those thoughts. So food, what we consume before thoughts, has an impact on our ability to act or reflect on those thoughts. And then thoughts themselves may impact our food choices. How do we take more control over that pattern?
This is where the fun really is at, and also the challenge. It's a double-sided sword. I think, and this is something that we talk about in Eat Smarter, which I'm digging in and providing the very best information on how our metabolism actually works, and really just providing this for the public at large. The very best information on how food relates to our cognitive performance, but not just like disease prevention, but which nutrients actually help me to make memories. What happens when I'm deficient in these things that elevates or escalates the incidence of me losing my focus and causing more distraction. So we dive in and talk about all these things, but we also get into and these are these labels again, this personal development side of the equation, because we have to really have this ability to have a sense of self-reflection and a self-assessment, just to know ourselves a little bit better. Because at this point, each and every one of us, we live with ourselves all the time. We have such a degree of expertise on who we are, but oftentimes we ignore it. Our behavior to us is a surprise, because we never really just take a moment to identify our behavior patterns. And just about any of us can be a quote emotional eater. It just depends on the context. So for myself, I definitely don't see myself as somebody who's an emotional eater. But the night when my wife was having our youngest son, it was like 2:00 in the morning, and I'm like eating these organic Raisinets. I'm just popping them, and I don't even eat stuff like that ever. I'm like just not attracted to it. But I was just over there like second nature, throwing it into my mouth. And it just depends on the context. So for me, there's obviously an elevated context of stress, and also the situational dynamics. For example, being up late at night, right? And this is something we talked about before in the last conversation we had, but my last book, Sleep Smarter, and how sleep deprivation inherently causes this rebound effect with our appetite, increases ghrelin, suppresses leptin, and our leptin sensitivity goes down. And so you're just going to have a natural tendency towards wanting to eat more, because your brain is wanting to shut down, like your parts of your brain, for you to just recover and come back better. So with all that said, it's understanding the conditions around you and your biochemistry, your food choices. All of this stuff is very individual. So what does this actually look like? Well, I break it into a couple of camps. I actually give an analogy using baseball. All right. I'm from St. Louis, born and raised, St. Louis, Missouri. So it's often referred to in our town as baseball heaven. All right. It's very audacious. I don't know if the rest of the country calls it that, but that was all we had for a long time, this baseball. And so I use an analogy in baseball of how each of our personality traits tend to be. And there's 4 of them. There's 4 really profound kind of classifications of folks in relationships to how we approach our diet, our cravings, our approach to managing ourselves. And the first one is somebody who swings for the fences. All right. These are folks who, whenever they are presented with a new diet or new exercise program, even just outside of the diet realm, just something new comes along, they go at it. There's like, they jump in, without looking, 2 feet, jump right in. And this is great because they can actually see some good success because they're doing something. However, without a level of preparedness, without like analyzing, was this the right situation for me and all the other pieces, they also tend to strike out quite a bit. And these are folks who might start something and then end up, struggling in the long term. All right. But each of these classifications I'm going to share have benefits and potential downsides. The next one is somebody who is waiting for the perfect pitch. All right. And we see this in baseball as well. Just waiting for the perfect pitch, waiting and waiting, waiting for everything to be perfect, the perfect conditions. And, you know, we do this with our diets as well. Like I need to get the right supplements. I need to get the right, you know, the right tennis shoes so before I could start, you know, working out at the gym. Everything has to be perfect. So they're waiting for the perfect pitch. And sometimes that doesn't come because a lot of times something will cycle and we just won't even get involved. And then another type, you know, so there's a swing for the fences, perfect pitch. And the other one is easy out. All right. Somebody who's a super easy out. All right. They're coming up, they can swing at anything, strike out, whatever. And these are folks who jump into stuff pretty quickly, but as soon as they meet some resistance, like we're experiencing right now in our life, they tend to jump out and throw the towel in. I just received a message from people today about, you know, because they haven't been working out, they haven't been eating as well. And they tie it to that, like their gym life was their life of health. Like that was their inroads. And they know, they said it themselves that they're not eating well because they're not working out. And if you're aware of that, you can adjust the behavior, but it's so like, they're so wrapped up in it, they're not seeing it. And lastly, we have the folks who are all around players. And I give the reference of one of my good friends is actually Ozzie Smith, right? Gold glove, perennial all-star St. Louis Cardinals, the Wizard of Oz. All right. And he's like, I think he's in his mid 60s now, but I would see him at the gym all the time. Super fit, just dedicated. He was known for his defense, but he didn't want to be pigeonholed as being a defensive player. So he worked to become an all-around player and end up winning batting awards as a shortstop. So these are people who can adjust to a lot of different things, who tend to have a level of consistency. And again, each of these has a benefit, and all of us can become all-around players, but we have to self-assess and see ourselves. So I know that was a lot. But I hope that we can start to see our character traits and how we're approaching our nutrition right now with so much going on, because the ability to self-assess is what helps us to adjust our behaviors.
I love that concept of self-assessment. I had the privilege of being raised by two college professors, so I had a kind of a weird upbringing. And my mom used to always use the term metacognate. She used to say, you know, we as humans, one of the unique abilities we have is to metacognate, or to think about our thinking. And that sounds like exactly what you're talking about here. We have the unique ability to think about our thoughts and to think about our macro approach to food. So many of us are asking questions like, you know, am I allowed to eat blueberries? If so, how many blueberries? And there's a much more meta level question, it sounds like, we need to be asking about food.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. You know, one of the things that I'm really working to impress upon culture right now, and I know that it's possible because of what happened with Sleep Smarter. It changed the culture, it changed the conversation around sleep wellness. I just did a presentation for Tom Brady's company, and their coaches, they have like sleep coaches and all this stuff. And it's just like many of those guys didn't even know who I was, but they knew my information. Like they were teaching this to other people. And so that's the ability of, and I love the statement that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And that's the ability that this has right now. And so one of my big missions is for us to finally stop associating or buying into diet dogma, and for us to truly understand, like from this day forward, the uniqueness of our metabolism. Each and every one of us has a very unique metabolic fingerprint. We're not like anybody else that's ever existed in human history or anybody who will exist in the future. We're not even the same as we were last week. Our metabolism is different, and it's going to be different tomorrow. It's constantly changing and dynamic, yet we put ourselves into these diet frameworks that can oftentimes imprison us. And it's not that there's so many wonderful diet frameworks that can be helpful. However, when even if it works for us, just say it works for 6 months, and then all of a sudden it stops working. But we make it that it's us. We are the problem, because it's just like, well, I just need to paleo harder. I just need to vegan harder. I just need to count my calories harder. And oftentimes that's not the issue. The issue is our unique metabolism, the things that actually control it, that it control what your body does with the calories you consume. They're dynamic and they're changing. And if we simply go back to the basic principles, which of course we can hit a couple of them, that control what my body's doing, then we can continue to win, no matter what diet framework we subscribe to.
So let's go through some of those basic principles, Shawn, because I know it is a tough time to be a human being right now. It's probably not going to be easier that soon. So we're going to need some tactics, and we're all individual, but there are some common principles we can put into play. Can you let us know maybe your top three? And clearly we got to get the rest from the book, but what are the top three?
Sure. Okay, so these are the things that actually control what calories do in your body. And by the way, as Jonathan has shared, I know many times, calories are simply a unit of measurement that's used, and it's such a, it's minutia. It's really minutia. And even when it was discovered, it wasn't even, folks weren't looking for this. Like if we look at hieroglyphics in, the Egyptian periods, there was nothing about calories. If we look at, the ancient Roman culture, nobody was looking for this. And actually when calories were discovered, it was used in physics and engineering. And it made its parlay into popular culture, Wilbur Atwater, of course, but also Lulu Hunt Peters, Dr. Lulu Hunt Peters. And she began the indoctrination of the culture to start to look at food in terms of numbers. And she said, you will no longer, this was early 1900s. She was like, and she sold 2 million copies of this book. So at this time, there's literally like everybody and their mother had this book. And she said, from now on, we will no longer look at food in terms of food. She said, you will no longer eat a slice of bread. You will now eat 100 calories of bread. You will no longer eat a slice of pie. You will eat 350 calories of pie. And we take something that's so dynamic that affects our genetics, our neurotransmitters, our hormones, our mitochondria. That's what food does. And now we've turned it into numbers. And with that, she also started the indoctrination of associating food with morality. And folks who couldn't manage their weight, it was a character defect. Not to mention she battled with her weight for her entire life, and so that's where the idea initially came from. But today we know that there are things that control what calories do in your body. One of those things is the type of food itself. And this should be clear, but we're going to make this extra clear. And there was a great study, and I was just pumped when I found this study because it's doing the thing that has been debated, which is, the quality of food doesn't matter. Just, cut calories, get in a calorie deficit. It's going to be okay. It's not okay. This was published in Food and Nutrition Research, and they had folks to consume whole foods or a meal of processed foods to see what happens with the rate of calorie burn in their bodies. And so they took one group of test subjects and they had them to eat what they deemed to be a whole food sandwich, which was multigrain bread and cheddar cheese. And the other group consumed white bread and cheese product, which if you're like, what is cheese product? Kraft, all right? That's not legally, they can't call it cheese. There's not enough cheese in the cheese. So a meal of processed foods. Now, here's the craziest part. These sandwiches were the same amount of calories, same amount of protein, carbohydrates, and fats. On paper, they're the same. But this is what happened. After compiling the data, they found that folks who ate the processed food sandwich had a 50% reduction in calorie burn after eating that sandwich. And the question is, why? The nature of those processed foods, these synthetic chemicals, changed what was happening with their endocrine system, changed what was happening with their brain, causing their body to retain and hold on to more of those nutrients, basically creating one of the things you refer to as a hormonal clog in their system. And once we understand that truly, that the quality of the food makes a massive impact. And the crazy thing is, this wasn't even like, it was still a sandwich. So it's, even if we just upgrade the quality of the things that we're having to more, quote, real ingredients, things that you can get closer to where they actually came from, you're going to start winning. So that's one. Number two, this is really the final frontier where we are right now in science. There's always more for the Trekkies out there. But the makeup of your microbiome, this is a huge part of your metabolic individuality. And there was an incredible study. This was published in the journal Cell. And they found that there's a specific bacteria that they found in mice that actually block their intestines from absorbing as many calories. And so when we hear that, some folks, I know, I've talked with people, they're like, I want that bacteria, whatever bacteria that is, I will mainline it, drink it, inject it, let me get that. But that's not what we're looking for here. And also, of course, we're not mice, but here's the correlation with humans. The Weizmann Institute did a study in correlation with that. And now we know, and even in my clinical practice, I can have somebody get a stool sample done. I can look at their bacteria diversity, And I can know with never even seeing them whether or not they're obese based on their bacteria. And so we know that there is a bacteria profile associated with obesity and diabetes and being overweight. And so what they did was they took fecal samples from folks who were obese and injected them, or implanted them into lean mice. And the human, quote, fat bacteria caused these mice who were otherwise lean to gain weight, decrease their insulin sensitivity, and increase their body fat, versus taking fecal samples from healthy human subjects and putting it into the mice, and the mice remained lean. And to put the cherry on the top of this one, they took twins, identical human twins, same caloric intake. They looked at the bacteria cascade of the twins, and they made sure they had one twin who had a cascade associated with obesity. Even though they're eating the same diet, the twin with the bacteria cascade associated with diabetes and type 2 diabetes and being overweight gained weight eating the same food while the other one did not. So this is way beyond the realm of just managing our calories. Last point here, super quick. And this is something I was taught in my university nutritional science class, but it didn't connect. And this is the concept of the thermic effect of food. It's as if this doesn't exist because our product labels don't account for this. It costs calories to absorb and use calories. All right. So when you're eating, we'll just say 100 calories of protein, it's going to cost your body about 30% of those calories to process that protein. So you're getting a net caloric gain of maybe 70 of those calories. And what is protein important for? All the hormones we're talking about, neurotransmitters, they're based on protein. We need protein. It's very important. But in our debate about carbs and fats today, protein is like Rodney Dangerfield, right? He's like, I get no respect. It's like that. And so about 20 to 30% of the energy is from protein is used to digest the protein. About 10 to 15% of the energy from carbohydrates is used to digest the carbohydrates. About 0 to maybe upwards of 5% of the energy in fats are used to digest the fat. So just keeping these things in mind and understanding it's not just the type of food. We need to get our microbiome healthy, but also having the ratio of macronutrients for us. And that is probably going to be different from one of the popular diet frameworks that are out there that might work for you for a little while, but you have to be flexible with yourself so that you can continue to dial these things in as the years go on.
Shawn, when I heard you say the title of your newest book, Eat Smarter, I said, that's a great title for a Shawn Stevenson book, because you have the very unique ability. You've got the steak and the sizzle, my friend. You've got the smooth delivery, and you've got the science, which I absolutely love. And I can imagine that is permeating every page of Eat Smarter. So when does that book come out again?
Thank you, brother. It comes out December 29th nationwide. Everybody can pick it up, Amazon bookstore, Barnes & Noble, Target. We actually have a partnership, a wellness initiative kicking off with Target stores across the country as well. So this doesn't really happen for big nutrition books like this, but it just speaks to the message and the content itself. And I truly believe in same thing with what Jonathan's doing and your film coming out. So, here soon, like these are happening right now for a reason. We really do need this. We need to get our citizens healthier, and we can also have fun while we do it. So thank you so much, man.
I appreciate it, Shawn. And everyone can go to eatsmarter.com to get more information about this book.
Eatsmarterbook.com.
Eatsmarterbook.com. Do not go to eatsmarter.com. It's actually a pornography website. No, I'm just kidding.
Food porn. It's food porn.
There you go. Go to eatsmarterbook.com. And of course, check out Shawn Stevenson's wonderful podcast and radio show. It's amazing. Shawn, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, as always, for joining us here on the SANE Show. My name is Jonathan Baylor, and remember, stay sane.